you see the possibilities that avail your children. I grew up the child of a civil servant. I grew up in Ikoyi, but I grew up aspirationally because I was right in the middle of so much. I went to Command, a school at the time that was a level playing field for children of civil servants, children of those in power. So every single time, and then I went to QC as well. Now, the realities are different. So we need to go back and see how that socialization was able to change the realities of many people, especially as it concerns our discourse on disability, inclusion, awareness, and accessibility. With these many points of mine, I am certain I've been able to tell you that the work is not just for the government. We have a lot of work to do, and it is possible, it is doable, it is achievable. Thank you very much.
Please let's applaud her. Thank you very much, General Manager Lasoda, Mrs. Adenike Oyetunde Lawal. Thank you so much. She said a lot, and you know, we say in the disability community that it is he or she that wears the shoes that know where it pinches. I was telling Kike the other time, you know, that I also experienced what Benga Daniel's, Benga Daniel experienced, you know, right at, don't let me mention the name of the bank now because they apologized at the end of the day. You know, they told me, you know, I told them the bank is not accessible. Okay, they apologized anyway, but First Bank, Ibadan, and FCMB Akowojo. That was when FCMB's incident was when I was in AIT, and by the time I was in LTV, I needed to do some transaction, and First Bank was not accessible. So I just told one of the securities to get one of their managers so that I can express myself, and they told me to hold on. So I was in the car for 1 hour waiting. You know, I kept requesting for the manager that will come and attend to me. He didn't do it in 1 hour. So what I just practically did when they did not listen to me was to drive my car right in front of the bank. And I blocked everybody. And I said, if you do not attend to me, nobody will be attended to. So that was when the manager saw me, he said from the camera, and he was like, oh, madam, we're very sorry. And I started educating them. Of course, I was angry. I was like, I'm a human being. I have blood flowing in my vein. Why are you treating me like that? And they started doing, madam. I said, see, everybody already know I've been, you know, shouting and all that. They don't even know if it is 2,000 naira I want to collect now. Security reasons. Anybody can just follow my car driving now. They won't know it's just something small that I want to collect. So we'll keep talking about inclusion. Exactly. We'll keep talking about, you know, the fact that everybody should be treated equally, and that disability can knock at anybody's door at any time. Thank you very much, General Manager Lasoda. Thank you.
And I'm especially happy that in one of the breakout sessions, we'll be talking about the discrimination, the
stereotypes, discrimination.
Yes, it's one of the sessions we'll be looking at. The more we talk about it, the better we'll create structure to end discrimination and stigmatization for people who are living with disability. Up till now, only 13 states in Nigeria have domesticated the prohibition against disability in Nigeria. So I'm happy that it's part of the lineup for the topics, and when it gets to the time, we'll do justice to it and we'll keep trending it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if you have taken pictures like me, or you have done a little video like me, I posted, please, if you need to post, ensure that you tag Patrick's speech, ensure that you tag Puresouls, Mana, children culture, and of course, Anto's house. Make sure you tag everybody so that we can trend, and the whole of Lagos, Nigeria, and the world, the global community, will actually know that this is taking place here and we're doing the right thing with the right audience in the room, empowering every voice, ensuring that community and family, between the community and the family, there's this synergy for special needs in Nigeria.
So that everybody can work together, create synergy, and give voice to the voiceless. We'd like to quickly appreciate, before we go to the discussion proper, we'd like to quickly appreciate our sponsors. A lot of people don't like doing disability. They don't like sponsoring anything that has to do with disability because they feel there's no profit in it. So we'd like to thank our sponsors, A.L. Allen, Aluko, and Oyebode. Please, let's clap for them.
Thank you very much for your support.
Even Texture.
Thank you very much for your support.
Federal Ministry of Education.
Thank you very much for your support.
GTB.
Oil Valley. Thank you very much for your support.
All Men Consulting.
Thank you very much for your support.
Okay. IASSIDD.
Thank you very much for your support.
Lotus Bank.
Thank you very much for your support.
Mixstar Africa.
Thank you very much for your support.
And of course, Buritala Muhammad Foundation.
They are gold sponsor. Thank you very much.
Mr. and Mrs. Sonny is included.
Thank you very much.
Mr. and Mrs. Dare Daniels is also part of the sponsors. And of course, we have the anchors.
Yes,
Answers
Heals. Answers Heals. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much. You acknowledge I called you earlier in the day.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming, for being part of this. And of course, we have LVI Art Gallery.
Thank you very much for your support.
For all our supporters, Ziba Foundation is also part of it.
Thank you very much.
Nathaniel Idowu Foundation.
Thank you, and thank you.
Much.
Would that be all?
Yeah.
We just do just a few more recognition and we'll move on to the next agenda on the program. Is to recognize the presence of Mr. Timothy Unorum, the financial manager, and Mr. Philip Ode, the project manager of CBN Global Disability Inclusion. They are in 11 countries, and for the two of them, they are representing the Nigeria office. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your support too. I also like to recognize the presence and thank them too for their support. Mr. Mason and Mrs. Ugochi Luders. They are the one providing us with coverage, talking about the CG studios. Thank you for your coverage.
Thank you. We appreciate
all
you.
your technical people around. We appreciate you very, very much. The last but not the least is Mr. Abel Ahire. I hope I got it. There are 3 names. He's here representing the Honorable Minister of Education. He is a Deputy Director in the Federal Ministry of Education.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome,
you very
sir.
much,
Thank
We
you for
recognize
coming,
the
sir.
Federal Ministry of Education for its support of this program. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, aside all of us that are seated in this hall, we have a large audience online who have queued into this program and they are following up with all of the discussion that is in the house. Permit me also joining us via Zoom to bring to us another keynote, Professor Paul Ajuwon. He'll be joining us online. Good morning, sir, and thank you for your patience and thank you for waiting this long. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, and greetings to you all across the world, and greetings to the organizers of this second international conference, led by Puresouls Learning Foundation, the Anthos House, Mana Children's Center, and Lighthouse for Autism. It gladdens me to know that you all have put hands together to do the right thing. We've been waiting for this type of action for a very long time. I'm going to start by giving general information on Nigeria. And the first thing I'd like to highlight, which our international audience may not be aware of, is that Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. It has a population of 227,800,314, according to an authoritative source called worldometers.info. Out of that huge number, 34.2 million are persons with disabilities. More than 90% of that 32.4 million live in the rural areas of Nigeria. The number of PWDs will rise significantly in the future owing to a variety of reasons, which include chronic poverty, congenital abnormalities, inefficient assessment procedures, collapsed buildings, road and industrial accidents, environmental toxins, witchcraft accusations, etc. The country has abundant natural resources. Nigeria is characterized by many complex social and religious practices which are visible along religious, with many citizens practicing Islam, Christianity, and traditional religion, or in combination of these three faiths. There are over 250 languages spoken. English remains the main language. Most Nigerian languages, unfortunately, have not developed appropriate terms to describe disabilities in ways that are inclusive and less degrading. Regrettably, some of the religious writings of the main faiths have created obstacles for PWDs because of the ways they equate disability with sin, the belief that disability connotes punishment for wrongdoing, and the perception that PWDs are cases of charity. Let me be clear about this. Although charitable activity for PWDs is sometimes a way of creating justice, I believe it subverts justice when it excludes PWD from society and keeps them out of the public eye rather than empowering them and their families for full social, economic, civic, and political engagement. This is why I'm particularly delighted that the four main organizing foundations are rising to the challenge by creating this platform for engagement, for collaboration, and advocacy for the rights and well-being of individuals living with disability in the country. I call on all participants and stakeholders to align with the goals and objectives set forth by the organizers and to move past the rhetoric we've heard over several decades to a point where we can say we have reached the promised land, where we can be proud of providing appropriate services and supports for sustainable inclusion of PWDs. I hold the position that the family and the community and society must work in concert with these four foundations to develop and grow a culture of accepting individual differences, respect, and accommodation. I'm drawing from my professional experiences and perspectives, being in Nigeria, schooled in primary and 2 secondary schools in Lagos, attended university in the United States and Canada, and I've lived in Canada and the United States. Therefore, I would like to begin by drawing on these experiences to buttress some of the points I'm going to make in my presentation. And first, I want to start with the precarious circumstances of children and youth with disabilities, especially those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, who have historically been underserved more than other disability groups in Nigeria. So what do we mean by intellectual disability? And I'm referring to the U.S. National Institutes of Child Health and Development. Intellectual disability, according to this institute, starts anytime before a child turns 18. It is characterized by differences with both, number one, intellectual functioning or intelligence, which include the ability to learn, reason, problem solve, and other skills. And number two, adaptive behavior, which includes everyday social and life skills. The term developmental disabilities is a broader category of often lifelong challenges that can be intellectual, physical, or both. IDD is the term often used to describe situations in which intellectual disability and other disabilities are present, and it may include certain nervous system, sensory system, metabolic, or degenerative disorders. Now, the 2016 Global Burden of Disease study found that while under age 5 mortality decreased in sub-Saharan Africa by nearly 70% from 1990 to 2016, the number of children under age 5 with any of 6 tracked developmental disabilities increased by 71%. The authors of those studies observed that because their estimates excluded most children with motor dysfunctions and idiopathic disabilities, their numbers grossly underestimate the magnitude of developmental disabilities. But in 2018, a report from the Global Research on Developmental Disabilities collaborators provided country-specific estimates for 2016 for the 6 tracked disabilities. And in Nigeria, the estimated number of children aged 0 to 4 years with epilepsy was 200,000 and was 200,966. With the intellectual disability, it was 625,430. With autism spectrum disorder, it was 206,736. And with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, it was 55,203. These 4 categories alone, while not necessarily mutually exclusive, sum to over 1,080,000 young children in Nigeria with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I will now look at how Nigeria is faring, particularly with regard to needs of children and adults with intellectual and other non-sensory disabilities in the 4 important areas of education, employment, healthcare, and society. Often, I will reference how some of the countries comprising the global north are addressing the same challenges and discuss what we can learn in Nigeria for the purpose of making meaningful improvements for children and young adults with IDDs and their families in our country. The United, I'm going to now refer to the 2006 UNCRPD, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, because that gives us a solid framework to talk about legal rights, human rights, and so on. That CRPD maintains that states should provide equal opportunities for children with disabilities in an identical manner to other children and upholding their human rights and fundamental freedom. Three core areas of rights are identified. First, in Article 24, that article addresses the core area of education and includes several things. Number one, the right to education without prejudice to equal opportunities in life, inclusiveness and equal access in all levels of education. Free and compulsory, inclusive and quality education within the community at primary and secondary levels with reasonable accommodation. Designing alternative means of communication, orientation, mobility, and mentoring. Access to general tertiary education, vocational training, adult education, and lifelong learning on an equal basis with others, and the employment of teachers with the requisite training to educate persons with disabilities in all educational settings. Now, these are important areas that have been enshrined into Nigeria's policies as well. Second is Article 25, which addresses the core area of healthcare, purporting that the state should ensure that PWDs attain the highest quality of healthcare free from discrimination, and that provisions should be made for early identification and intervention. Third article that I want to reference is Article 28, which provides for an adequate standard of living and social protection, including one, access to clean water and appropriate and affordable services. Devices and assistance. Two, needs-based assistance for training, counseling, short-form care, and other disability-related expenses. And thirdly is access to public housing programs. On the continent, and specifically Nigeria, the African Union began the initiative that refined the CRPD that I mentioned previously. African Union drafted its own African Charter on Human and People's Rights in 2018. Article 16 of the Charter, African Charter, like Article 24 of the CRPD, addresses education of PWDs and provides that they should be able to explore their physical and mental abilities to the fullest without prejudice, but as a means of reinforcing the African values. Similar to the African Union's position, the Nigeria Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Act of 2018 includes the following key provisions. 1. A person with a disability has the right to an education free of discrimination or segregation. 2. A person with a disability is entitled to a free education up to secondary school level. The third point is that all public schools shall be inclusive and accessible to PWDs and shall provide assistive devices, facilities, and or specialized curricula for their effective education. Number 4, and each public school shall have at least one trained professional whose training shall be highly subsidized to cater to the educational development of PWDs. In my opinion, and as a researcher and scholar who comes in and out of Nigeria to interact with the stakeholders, I believe the foregoing policy measures were designed to empower PWDs and their families and to sustain their inclusiveness and participation in society. But, and here is the but, the current harsh social and economic developments in the country have greatly diminished the effectiveness of these measures. I will now examine the state of education in Nigeria for persons with developmental disabilities and intellectual challenges. We in Nigeria know about the national policy on education and its mandate on school attendance for all school-age children. In spite of this mandate, one NGO, the Zama Institute in Abuja, reports that only 2% of Nigerian children with disabilities are enrolled in school. The NGO, like other concerned advocates and researchers, suggests that educational policy has failed to be well implemented due to lack of resources and funding, inadequate teacher training, continuing societal stigmatization of PWDs. But there are other factors which explain school participation of PWDs, not just of PWDs, but all Nigerians. The last demographic and health survey in Nigeria, conducted in 2018, showed remarkable variation in female education. Nationally, 40% of girls aged 6 to 9 and 24% of girls ages 10 to 19 had no years of formal education. Among all females aged 6 and above, 48% of rural females had no formal education, compared to 20% of urban females. The rates of no formal education track closely along geographic lines, ranging from a high of 57% in the northeastern zone to a low of 11% in the south-south zone. The northern region of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim, while the southwest has a large Protestant and southeast has a largely Roman Catholic following. It is likely that religious views influence the value that families place on education, especially of girls and children with disabilities. Household wealth also tracks closely with no formal education among females aged 6 and above, ranging from 75% in the lowest household wealth quintile to just 7% in the highest quintile. In addition to these demographic correlates with school attendance are more tangible ones. Although public education is supposed to be provided at no cost to secondary school. The reality is different. Unlike what obtains in the global north, in Nigeria, books, uniforms, transportation, and even school desks are often left to the parents to provide. Families from lower income may be forced to prioritize which children they will send to school and for how long, based on the child's anticipated ability to succeed and contribute to the overall well-being of the family in the future. So, what that means is that children with disabilities are less likely to receive an equal share of meager family resources. I think we all know that, and we have to be realistic about that. Let me talk about models of education for our international audience, models of education in Nigeria. Some states in Nigeria have public schools which exclusively serve students with disabilities, particularly the sensory disabilities of vision and hearing impairments. Other public schools have separate classrooms for students with special educational needs. Typically, and from my interactions and research work, students with IDD are cared for in homes. For instance, the Beth Story homes in Apapa, Lagos, in Zaria and Kano. Unfortunately, these educational programs serve a limited number of children and are located mainly in urban cities, thereby excluding 90% of needy children and their families who live in rural areas of Nigeria. I will now talk about specialist teachers and how they are trained with regard to children with IDD and other disabilities. The mode of training of teachers who serve these children has lagged behind in the 19 or so colleges, polytechnic and universities that have been accredited for this purpose in Nigeria. In fact, it is common knowledge that 90% of these trainees do not choose special education or rehabilitation as a first or second, but rather as third choice on their JAMB application. While the 10% of these candidates who show keen interest and successfully complete their program of study work just for a few years before they become afflicted with JAPA syndrome. The low priority accorded to the field of training specialists and the burning desire to seek greener pastures abroad imply that many higher institutions cannot offer high quality training to newer teachers who may find themselves with students with disabilities. And the consequence of this imbalance implies that simply attending school doesn't ensure that children with special needs will receive an appropriate and effective education. Regardless of what was promised in the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act of 2018 and in Section 7 of the National Policy on Education 2014, many public and inclusive schools still lack the specialized equipment, the specialized facilities, and importantly, the qualified teachers needed to level the playing field. And in a bid to improve the learning situations of children and youth with challenges, some parent-led organizations like the four that are organizing this conference and others have established programs in various urban areas in Nigeria which serve students with IDDs and other disabilities. But from what we know, most of these schools lack sufficient funding for effective operations. And this is where I feel the government should rise to its commitment to make sufficient budgetary provision that will aid these institutions. Now, the topic of work or employment for persons with disabilities is very, very important. And I will now briefly talk about that. Again, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities states that the right of persons with disabilities to work on an equal basis with others is important. And this includes the right to the opportunity to gain a living by working freely or accepted in a labor market. Discrimination on the basis of disability is prohibited regarding conditions of recruitment, regarding hiring and employment, and continuance of employment. Importantly, PWDs are entitled to just and favorable conditions of work, equal remuneration for work of equal value, safe and healthy working conditions, and the redress of grievances. Furthermore, they should have effective access to general technical and vocational guidance programs and placement services and vocational and continuing training. According to the convention, state parties should promote employment opportunities and career advancement for PWDs in the labor market, and ensure reasonable accommodation is provided to PWDs in the workplace. There have been employment-related policies that toe the preceding line in Nigeria. Nigeria's Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act provides penalties against either a person or company for violating the employment rights of PWDs. Section 29 of the Discrimination Act further states that all employers of labor in public organizations shall, as much as possible, have persons with disabilities constituting at least 5% of their employment. While this is a commendable form of affirmative action, it applies only to governmental entities. In my opinion, it is recommended that the law be expanded to include private companies with more than 15 employees, and that the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities be better positioned to enforce the act. Well, we know that health is important for everybody, including people with disabilities. So I'm going to briefly touch on issues related to persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Like the 2006 UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, the 2018 African Charter on Human and People's Rights also addresses healthcare. It portends that equal health standards are to be provided for free to all children with disabilities, including intellectual disabilities. Chapter 2 of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria enshrines the rights to education and healthcare. However, importantly, Section 2 of the Constitution, of the same Constitution, makes it clear that no court has jurisdiction to pronounce any decision as to whether an organ of government has acted or is acting in conformity with the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. This means, in effect, that provisions cannot be enforced in a court of law. Nigerians with disabilities and their families have often documented their concerns regarding their negative experiences with healthcare providers. In fact, in some of our own studies that we've done in hospitals at Lagos University Hospital and in Ibadan, persons with disabilities have complained about the negative treatment being meted out to them. This negativity has also been collaborated by the report of the National Baseline Survey on Persons with Disabilities, which, interestingly enough, was funded by the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development in 2011. And in that report, it was cited that there is a need for the Nigerian government to, quote and unquote, redeem itself in terms of providing equitable healthcare services for PWDs. These PWDs are faced with higher incidences of both communicable and non-communicable diseases. In my opinion, this is an urgent and important human rights issue, given that persons with disabilities die earlier. So what is the situation in which families of these children and their siblings find themselves? And this is the last point, and a very important point, very important to me and should be very important to all the stakeholders that I want to discuss. Families are very important to the upbringing of our children, including those with disabilities. In 2012, we published a paper based on findings from families of children in Nigeria. They completed a quality of life survey and they participated in group interviews. A third of this family identified caregiver burden as a primary stressor due to both lack of available home care assistance and unaffordability. Affordability was also seen as a limiting factor in obtaining adequate health care and medications for children with disabilities. Many families told us that as a result of the difficulties, they had to rely on services from traditional healers. Many also stated that poor attitudes and lack of information from health professionals hindered their well-being. On a positive note, though, most respondents that we interacted with described supportive relationships with nuclear and extended family, which were particularly strong in families which practiced their religious faith and followed traditional cultural values. In that study, we noted that Western society has challenged complex social relationships present in traditional Nigerian cultural roles and eroded traditional family values. These attitudes spill over to the community at large, resulting in stigmatization or simply indifference. One respondent suggested that the best approach to enlightening the community about disabilities was to proactively involve their child in community-based activities. Disability-related support services were identified in three categories, which I will discuss briefly. One is professional, such as speech and language therapy. Then there is the community-based, such as vocational training, and there is also home-based, such as specialized healthcare and respite care services. While cost was a major obstacle, the difficulty of transporting their child to a service location, even when available, was an often reported barrier. Faith-based institutions were seen as a venue for promoting the acceptance of children with disabilities through both positive messaging and opportunities to participate in social activities. Among other things, the recommendation was made for the development of more government disability policies and initiatives to train caregivers. Many families are poor. Social service type assistance may not be available for free or may not be available at all. For instance, families reported that they needed respite care. They needed home health assistance so that they can take time off to regenerate. In concluding, I would like to call on state, local, federal government, lawmakers to work together with the four foundations and others to promote the rights and well-being of PWDs and their families in Nigeria without further delay. I believe a very strong component of such an approach must include strong advocacy, retention of suitable policies, and provision of adequate funding for effective training of special educators, training of rehabilitation counselors, and training of social workers, etc. We all need to work together to respect the inherent dignity, individual autonomy, and independence of people with disabilities and their families. I wish you all a successful conference, and I congratulate you for organizing this gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Paul Ajuwon. That was very robust. Let's celebrate Prof one more time. Thank you so very much. There is really nothing that can be added to his keynote address. But permit me to just say that for me, what remains key in all of the things he has said, or what I would take away as my own key point, is the fact that he mentioned the issue of education. He said education is a leveler. So anywhere we are, we must empower every PWDs with education. It could be formal and it could also be vocational, because we understand that with intellectual disabilities, some people may not key into the formal set of education. That's why if you go to, is it my left-hand side, you will see some people, some children and adults doing amazing work when it comes to arts. I mean, I've seen some and I'm like, wow. So there is definitely ability in disability. And of course, Prof also mentioned the issue of family. Family is key. We all need community. Please, don't die in silence. Make sure you belong to a cluster. I know that DM Lasoda talked about cluster. We all need one another to pull through, because, indeed, taking care of a child with disability could be overwhelming. It could be financially draining. It could be mentally and emotionally draining. If you don't need support, it can lead to suicide. It can lead to abandonment and so many other things. So please, I like to agree with Prof that family is key. And finally, talked about health care. I hope that one day we'll live to see a society where our health system is inclusive for everyone. That's SDG 3 and SDG 4. I believe that we can achieve it. One more time, let's put our hands together for our keynote speaker, Professor Paul Ajuwon. Okay, you want to make some announcements before we continue?
Okay, before we move to the discussion proper now, I just want to announce that we have water over there at the back. To my right, I think it will be your left. We have water, we have coffee, we have tea.
Snacks.
And snacks too.
So the ushers, the ones with the pink t-shirts, you say ask me. They will lead us there for our, we can call it a break, tea break, as we move to the next session.
Yes.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me also recognize the presence of Ajibike Bakari, the head teacher of Juniper Hill School. Thank you for being here, ma. We appreciate you. All right, if you are trending your videos already about this event and you are trending your pictures, don't forget to hashtag IDC, that is Intellectual Disability Conference, hashtag IDC. And of course, the second hashtag is EEV, that is Empowering Every Voice, EEV 2024. Over to you.
Okay, so
for the greatness session.
Okay, so the conversation starts now.
Exactly.
And the very first group will be moderated by Mrs. Patience Akonde.
Let's put our hands together for her.
She's a teacher and educationist, a mother, a sister. Come up, come up, come up. Don't worry, when we get there, you know, we have able men here that can push you up the ramp. Or do you want to take this place too?
No.
Please, let's clap for her.
And all our panelists are seated and vibrant and ready for this next first breakout session. It's going to be interesting because all the persons in these next breakout sessions are actually voice makers, change makers, and they have been, you know, improving inclusion in their own different spaces. So, I'm out of here. Are you comfortable?
Good morning. Okay, it's afternoon already. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you once again to the second Intellectual Disability Conference, where every voice matters. That's exactly why we're here. Every voice in the society, irrespective of the disability you have, you should have a voice. And with me, okay, so irrespective of the disability you have, I say to people that sometimes some disabilities are physical. You can actually see a physical disability. Now let's talk about persons with intellectual disabilities. I can be seated there and I have an intellectual disability and you do not know. How about that? Yes, there are no physical attributes to tell that I have an intellectual disability. That's why we are here today to discuss about these various forms of disability. I see that a lot of our conversation was a lot more centered around physical disabilities. Yes, that's because I don't need to introduce myself. You can see already I have a disability. Let's also move the narrative to persons with invisible. I like to use the word invisible. You can't see, you can't tell that they have a disability. Let's move the narrative so that's angle, and that's why we are seated here today. And before we continue this conversation, I have my esteemed panelists to join me on this conversation. I'll begin with, in no particular order, I'll begin with an ace broadcaster. Okay, so for our online participants, please, while the session is going on, you can drop in your questions. They'll be selected and we'll take them up from here. So I have an ace broadcast professional, the beautiful Esther Omokbariola, to join on today's conversation. Let's keep clapping. She's not here yet. Let's keep clapping. Let's welcome her. Thank you, Esther. Esther is a highly talented broadcast professional from Lagos, Nigeria, with almost 2 decades of experience reporting, investigative writing, producing and representing news bulletins and programs. She's worked with several media houses, including TVC News, Super Screen Television Lagos, Galaxy Television Lagos, and currently she works as a news anchor plus an environment correspondent at TVC News. Welcome, Esther. Good to have you. Okay, I'll be moving on to another amazing journalist, an astute journalist with lots of years of experience. I'll be calling on Blessing Oladunjoye. Blessing Oladunjoye is an astute journalist with over 8 years experience in the media industry. She currently works with BO News Service, an online development platform that focuses on women, persons with disabilities, and children. She has a bias for gender and disability reporting, a fellow of the Solutions Journalists African Initiative. She's received several awards to this recognition, and she's a disability inclusive advocate. Welcome once again, Blessing. Good to have you. Okay, we are moving on to another important member of this panelist. Okay, I have to call on Damilola Banire, a phenomenal radio and television broadcaster, a multiple award-winning television and radio broadcaster, mediapreneur, event host, and lots more. She's got over 14 years of experience and diligently worked with different media broadcast stations. Banire is an SDG advocate, a volunteer worker at Beings Foundation, and a director at Lag Island 24 Entertainment, and the CEO of the Zemba Concept. Damilola, you are most welcome. Good to have you on this media roundtable. Okay, so we have a gentleman amongst us, a very gentleman. The last man standing and the only gentleman in this conversation. I would like to call on Mr. Sunday Aikulola. Mr. Sunday Aikulola, that's such a privilege to be the only man amongst us here. Welcome, Mr. Sunday. Mr. Sunday is a correspondent with the Guardian newspaper with over a decade experience in the media industry. He's also a member of the Nigerian Union of Journalists, a social science researcher, also a mentor with the Tony Elumelu Foundation. Hello? Okay. Okay, so we have an interesting topic before us today. The topic before us is an interesting one, and I'm grateful that this topic will begin with the same story we've been hearing about the same Debola Daniel story. You know, we're talking about the media here, and we see how powerful the media is in helping to propagate information, either negative or positive. We saw how Debola was able to use the media positively to his advantage and to help persons with disabilities, you know, have a voice in the society. The topic before us today is strategies for promoting positive media representation. I'll take that again. Strategies for promoting positive media representation and combating stereotypes among persons with special needs. And we could also say persons with disabilities. Okay, so before we proceed, I would like to say that when we say special needs, when we say disabilities, those words can be used interchangeably, though they don't actually mean the exact same thing, but they can be used interchangeably in this discussion we're going to have now. So I'm going to say that when we're talking about those persons, I'm talking from the Nigerian angle now, the aspect. when you say you have a disability, the first thing that comes to mind is she's not capable of doing anything. She cannot. She's confined. We have so many stereotypes attached to persons. I know it's a general thing all over the world, but I'm talking from the space where I live and from the experiences I have encountered. Okay, so we're here to talk about how the media can help us push out a more positive story, can help us, create more awareness, because I discovered that a lot of people would prefer to read or watch things on the media rather than read from the books. So the media is doing a great job in either helping us do this positively or negatively. Hence the need for the discussion. So without further ado, let's go on straight to the discussion for today. So Ms. Sunday, Mr. Sunday, actually wish you were somewhere close here. Okay, so can we have him seated here so that we don't keep? Yes, I guess yes. Yes, please. Okay, okay. So can we move all of the chairs? Yes, I think so. We all can. Can we bring all of the chairs here? It's okay. Okay. Yes. Oh. Okay. Okay, so Mrs. Sunday, this question is for you. Okay, so can you tell us how you work with the print media? And we see a lot of publications online. I want to assume that all print media have a platform, a social platform, where even if you don't have a copy of the print, you can read on the social platform. So how does your media define positive representation of persons with disabilities?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to be here. In defining positive representation of persons with disabilities, the media is changing the narrative. We are giving voice to the voiceless. We are amplifying their voice. For instance, during the last general elections, we stressed the need for the persons with disability. We educated them on their rights. They can vote and be voted for. Simply, on the other hand, we also did education. We educated the masses on international protocols on rights of persons with disabilities. These protocols include, like Prof mentioned earlier, every person with a disability has a right to participate in political and public life. State parties shall take all appropriate policy, legislative and other measures to ensure these rights on the basis of equality, including undertaking, facilitating systematic and comprehensive civic education to encourage full participation of persons with disabilities in democracy and development process, including by ensuring civic and voter education materials are available in accessible formats. So the media is driving the change. The media is changing the narrative. The media is giving voice to the voiceless. The media is setting the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sunday. Okay, so if you have questions, please, you can write in your questions, and online participants, please drop in your questions in the chat room. Thank you, Mr. Sunday. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to ask you a question on that. Okay, so moving on to Miss Blessing. Okay, so you work with the BO News, and you are focused on disability inclusions of persons or women and children, yes. That's where your focus is. Okay, so I'm going to ask that what specific actions or initiatives has your media industry taken to promote positive representation of persons with disabilities in creating your content?
Thank you very much. And let me say good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here, to be speaking to you all. At BO News, we're specifically focused on gender issues and disability issues. So in every subject that we discuss or that we produce content on or about, we mainstream disability and gender in it. And we're also big on the issue of human rights, and social issues as the way we promote disability inclusion. So for instance, there are different models of disability, which you all know. There's a charity-based approach, there's a medical-based approach, but our own as a media platform, we promote the human rights-based approach. As such, by the time we're putting out content, we're not putting out content that degrades or that demeans persons with disabilities. For instance, there was COVID, right? I want to say there is COVID because, of course, there's still COVID. But then there was a lockdown. So many people were affected. So many issues were out there. At that time, by the time we were reporting, and people were really stranded, people needed support a whole lot. By the time we were making demands to say persons with disabilities needed support, we're not putting out to say help them, help them, help them. Yes, they needed help. But by the time we're selling the narratives, we're selling it in a positive perspective, and we're not saying persons with disabilities are less human. So we are portraying them in a positive perspective. And the way we design our content as well. You're designing a video, for instance, a particular video that we did during COVID-19 as well, which was specifically about women with disabilities, trying to talk about messaging, because messaging at that time was also important, trying to put out the right narrative out there about COVID-19, what people should do, and we engaged different disability clusters at the time. And there was a video, of course, we engaged women with disabilities across Nigeria. We couldn't go out there, so we asked people to send in their videos. A woman on a wheelchair sent her video across, and by the time the editor was editing the video, was really zooming in and zooming out the leg, that to really show that this person is on a wheelchair. And yeah, he actually passed on, it was on, and it was published on YouTube before it occurred to me that this should not be the way it should be out there. So there are certain things that it doesn't occur to us. Doesn't come to our subconsciousness. We've done it already. We've pushed out the messaging just because we want to whip some sentiment, and we already send it out there. But we are more deliberate about ensuring that the right information get there. And it's not just pronouncing the disability, but what other things about this person, about this conversation, about this content that we want people to be aware of that we're pushing out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. I have a question for you as well, but before that, I'll move on to Esther. Esther, she works with TV News at the moment, and she covers the environment as well. So that means you're familiar with moving around and seeing lots of happenings. Absolutely. Okay, so I'll say to you that when we talk about persons with disability, like I said earlier, we have the physical and the invisible ones, okay? So when you want to portray the stories, I'm asking that. Okay, so let me rephrase and say that, can you give a particular project where your industry has portrayed persons with disability respectively and authentically? You know, we see lots of stories. I have my personal stories. I have lots of stories to share, but I'll go into that later. You know, where stories are written about these persons, you want to take that part where it suits your audience, where you have lots of traffic, where, you know, people would want to read the story because. So my question now is, can you actually give instances where these individuals have been portrayed respectfully and authentically? Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me on this platform. So before I started covering environment, I did a little bit of stories on persons with disabilities. I did on someone who was physically challenged. I also did a story on autism. So, but for physically challenged or for persons with disabilities, we were able to do a story with regards to an individual who was using a wheelchair. But instead of focusing on his disability, we're able to look at what he was able to do, you know, in his present condition. Right now, he's a graduate and he's done his master's. So he actually has a music studio, and that's what got me fascinated. Because from the music studio, he was even able to train his children. He's married, so he's more like independent. So we focused on the story I worked on, focused on his ability to thrive in a challenging terrain like Nigeria. Because, you know, in Nigeria, we hardly have the facilities that would accommodate persons with disabilities. They do not have ramps in most public facilities. They do not have access to public institutions because of these challenges, mobility challenges. So for persons like him, he was able to, let's say, carve a niche for himself as a music producer. And that in itself, he was able to produce some music artists, and that in itself has also made him a name, because he also had the support of this lady who now is in London, Nikki Laoye. So she supported him to own the music studio. So he's more independent now. So my story focused on his ability to, surmount the challenge that country right now faces. The terrain is really tough. They do not have access to some facilities. So how he's able to manage, such situation and come out tops was what my story focused on. Then again, for autism, for children living with autism, it was more like a story to just tell that it should not be seen like, oh, once a child is autistic, then there isn't any future for that child. So I visited Mrs. Akonde, and I got to see that most of the children there, they are not just given a chance to learn, but also given the chance to, try into some vocational training of some sort. So you're not dependent on what the society has to give you. So you are largely independent. So however you're being trained, whatever value you get at the time when you are in the school, once you leave the school, you are able to stand on your 2 feet. So that in itself is what my stories portrayed as a special report. We call it in our own business. Yeah. So we were able to highlight things that persons with disabilities can do, aside from getting sympathy or pity, that these ones, they do not have any value. But if you see them as individuals, that they have something to offer, not that they need your pity, but incorporate them, see them as persons, as human beings like yourself that have value that they can bring. That in itself is what we need to do. That's what we actually propagate in our state.
That was Hello? Hello, okay. Thank you so much, Esther. That was an interesting perspective. We hardly see stories like this. Yes, that's one of 1,000. Yes, you've said you've written that, or you've published a story about that. But we see more of the negative ones, where people want to, focus on what these persons cannot do. We see so many what they cannot do, what they cannot do. So that's why we're partnering with the media, so that there can be this synergy, so that when these stories are being published, let's look on the brighter side. Let's focus on what those persons can do, so that it can encourage others and come out of their shells. There are a lot of people who are closed behind closed doors. They don't want to come out. They feel, what will people say? But when we have the stories online, the truth is, every one of us, we have a media tool in our hands, either we like it or not. You might not work in any of those media houses, but you have a media tool, either by your social media handles. You can read something online. It's what you read that forms in your brain. That's the truth. What you get to see in the media, that's where the stereotype begins from. So the media should help us push more narrative and awareness, and it will help us have a more inclusive society. Thank you so much, Esther. Okay, so going on to another question I have here. So there was a time I was interviewed. The story was written about me, and when the story was published eventually, a lot of things were changed from the story. A lot of things I did not say were, published. Of course, I was not happy about it. The story centered on what I do as a person with disability. But when the story was going to be published, it had a heading that looked like I'm doing something extraordinary, which when you're writing that same story about a person without a disability, it's just going to be a regular topic. So why do we have to coin titles that will make it look as if these people have done it eventually? So here is my question, and that's for Damilola.
Yes, please.
Okay. So
Yes,
Damilola. Okay, so Damilola, I want to ask now that when you're writing stories about these individuals with special needs, okay, so when you're writing a story about persons with special needs, do you actually take proper permission from them? When I mean permission, you want to do a video, because she actually mentioned something about that. You want to cover a story about a woman who is breastfeeding her child. For a regular person who has no disability, you just say, oh, she just puts there a child. But in a story of a person with a special needs, you want to go all out to prove a point that these persons can actually breastfeed. So because of that, you capture scenes or clips that should not be shown to the public. And you do not care how these persons feel. You want to show the sensitive part of this because you actually want the world to know that she actually fed this child herself. So my question now is, do you actually take from these persons before publishing theirs? When I say permission, I'm sure you understand what I mean. Thank you, Damilola.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if my voice is loud enough. I would like to say good afternoon to every person sitting here today. And because it's the first time I'm seeing everyone here this month, I'll say Happy New Month to you all, and may it be a prosperous month for us. So moving on to your question, as a broadcaster spanning over 14 years of experience, I will say the first thing that every individual needs is empathy. Because without even not digressing into the PWDs now, I think I'd like to make an example. Last week, I'm the host of one of the Yoruba popular shows on YouTube, Oyimomo. And I think last week I had two guests, one of which is a wife to an actor whose ex-wife is also an actor. Maybe if you try and understand. So the first thing I did was, what are the things you're comfortable talking about? What are the things you do not want us to go into? The second person is also an actor, and I discovered that, the video is online, and I asked her a very simple and precise, straight question. If she had done so, and so. And her answer was yes. And when I saw that interview on a blog, the interview, I was the presenter. When I saw it on the blogs, it was not what we even talked about that was published as the headline. It was disheartening to me, and she sent me the blog. And right there on Instagram, I was like, Jesus, how did we even talk about this at all? So now looking at people living with a form of ability, like I see it, not disability. Because in every disability, there is an ability we choose not to look at. And that's what I see. And that's why I say, for broadcasters, as persons, empathy is the first thing we need to bring on the table. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of things in a lot of ways. But if you have not put yourself empathetically in their shoes or to reason alike like with them, you are just going to do things on your own volition. So it is appropriate that you ask. I do. Whenever I have a guest, either on TVC, any of my shows have been on Silverbird. Whenever I have a guest, I like to ask them, what are my perimeters? Because I would not also want you to be dragged because of my profession. I'm not one of the, I tell my producer in the studio that I'm not one of those presenters that are looking for clout. I just want to do my professional job and leave it. So sometimes, yes, it affects some of us when we are trying to look at, what caption seems right, what caption will be catchy, and we throw cautions to the wind. So sometimes when I hear, NBC is about to sanction, I'm like, we will learn by force. So yes, many a times, we need to first of all put empathy on the table, irrespective of whoever, gender difference, ability difference. You owe yourself the duty to ask this person that has come to you what he or she is comfortable talking about. So that you know that at the end of the day, you have the person's trust that, this person spoke to me in such manner, and I know it is not this person that would have betrayed me. So yes, I do ask for permission, and I always tell my other colleagues, ask them what they want to talk about. Back to the interview I mentioned, we talked about this particular actor's ex. And after the show, she said, Dami, I just didn't want to cut the interview. My husband had categorically said I shouldn't talk about his ex. Do you understand me? Do you know that we had to shoot that interview all over again? We had to plead with her to come back to the studio, that we were going to take care of whatever logistics it was, and we were just going to do away with that very interview. Why? Because I was caught in the web of, I have a producer who handed me a series of questions that I thought they must have clarified with the person, asking her boundaries and permissions. But later on, she said, oh, it was because I heard your name as the presenter of the show, and I know your pedigree. That's why I came. And I took it upon myself to tell my producer that, you know what, this cannot fly under my name. I won't do it. There are certain tenets that I won't cross. It's just for personal reasons, and of course, to also show sympathy and solidarity with whoever is with you at that particular time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Damilola. Honestly, I'm really blown away, and I feel like letting you keep talking and talking. You know, talking about empathy, that, as you just mentioned, is one of the key things to, you know, consider or think about when talking about persons with disability. Empathy is just simply putting yourself in their shoe. Just assume I am the one with this disability, with this special needs. How would I feel if I see a story about myself? She gave a perfect example, a very perfect one. Thank you so much, Damila. I'm coming back to you as well for further questions. Okay, now let's talk about stereotypes. This is one aspect where it's very personal to me, because I've experienced lots and lots of that, and I'm sure persons with disability can tell to that as well. So when we talk about stereotypes, it's basically just assumptions people made. You know, it's something they just made up in their head, and they are comfortable to believe that that is the fact and that's the truth, and people live on with that. So here are some stereotypes associated with persons with disability. You hear people say that, oh, he's very slow, he's retarded. You hear words like she's confined to the wheelchair. You hear words like she's not capable of doing, you know, these titles can be very emotionally, you know, draining for those persons. You want to address me, see me as an individual first before that disability. I say it all the time, person first before the disability. So whatever it is the person has, address me first before you even see my disability. So here are the things I'm asking you, and this question is for you, Esther. So when talking about stereotypes in the media industry, are you going to say that the media has helped in propagating these stereotypes among persons with disabilities? Is the media one of the tools that has helped these stereotypes, you know, thrive more in the media space?
Okay, so, you know, when we categorize the media, we should also take note that we also have new media.
Yeah.
We have the social media. We have those who use the social media for their own, you know, profits and all of that. Then you have the traditional media. You have the TV, radio, and of course newspaper. So for traditional media, it is expected that as a broadcaster or whatever medium you are operating, you should be at least professional.
Okay.
Professional in the sense that whatever story you are telling, it should at least carry the value, whatever it is you're telling. If you're talking about a person with disability, rather, apologies for that, you should be able to know that there are some certain terms you would use. It's not permissible to go on air and, you know, publish stories and expect it to just go without anyone's attention. Of course, it will attract some attention on the part of the editor, on the part of the news producer, or even NBC. That is just going extra. But sometimes, most media houses, whenever we write stories, we have a news editor who ensures that whatever stories are published is being cross-checked. For instance, a news reporter went to cover, she did a story on persons with disabilities, and she didn't know the term to use. Okay. She wrote persons living with disabilities. So that in itself, the editor saw it quickly and told her, no, this cannot fly. We cannot do this, because if we do this, it will attract not sanctions, but concerns from individuals who represent this group. So if we are to do it, let's do it properly. They are being identified as PWDs and not PLWDs, or disabled persons. You don't call them disabled persons because they are able. They can do things. So you call them in the right term, which is PWDs, or you want to call them people with special needs. You know, so these are the ways we go about ensuring that our stories do not have a particular stereotype. That okay, when you hear stories coming about with someone who is not physically able to a sense, you don't go around saying, oh, she is walking with she walks around with wheelchair. She is blind, or he's blind, visually impaired. These are the terms that are mostly abide by whenever we're writing such stories. But when you talk about social media and those who do things for the sake of, will I say, clout chasing or trying to gain traffic, they sometimes throw caution to the wind so that they can be able to get the traffic to their platform. So that's why some have called for the regulation of the social media space so that we can have a little bit of sanity when telling such stories with regards to persons living with persons with disabilities, apologies for that, and also other areas that requires attention so that we are not just telling stories, we're also informing our audience in the right manner so they know that there are people like this among us and these are the ways we should see them. We shouldn't see them as though they have a challenge, but they have something that we should appreciate. So that's why I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Esther. And we're looking forward to the day where we'll have someone with autism, someone with Down syndrome read the news to us. It will be an amazing thing to see. Yes, that's what inclusion is all about. Yes, we want to see all of that, not leave them to work behind the scene. We want to see them. Yes, we hear the word slow. Let's be patient to listen to the very... Can we see what BJ did? BJ, and yes, even if he was going to take us through 4 verses of the national, we are going to stay by and we're going to sing. So that's what inclusion is all about. Irrespective of the disability, we should let everyone have a voice. Okay, so if you have questions, you can start writing in your questions. We can take a few questions, both from the online participants as well. Now, talking about... we talked about name tags already. Esther was able to answer some of these questions already about name tags, okay? So we're here to educate ourselves. We don't want to go about saying things like imbecile. We don't want to hear things like living with a disability. It's just a person with disabilities. We don't live with disabilities. We are humans before the disability. Okay, so I have another question here, and that'll be going on to Sunday. Sunday, the holy man standing. Okay, so Sunday you work with the print media, Guardian newspaper particularly. So how do you ensure the persons with disabilities are portrayed multidimensional and diverse in the media project? You know, you print out, I would say just not print out, you also have a social media platform where you showcase these things. So you working with the print media, how do you showcase these persons?
Okay, thanks. Very briefly, like the name tags, for instance, we ensure that we are extremely careful. You know, instead of saying, for instance, an albino, you can use persons living with albinism. Okay, instead of using deaf or saying deaf, we can say persons with hearing disabilities. Instead of saying confined to wheelchair, you can say persons with mobility impairment. Okay, instead of saying blind person, you can say visually impaired. So we're extremely cautious in the use of languages so that it's not be derogatory, because the media wields great influence. India is very powerful, especially the mainstream media, unlike the social media platform. We are careful about misinformation and disinformation. We are careful about the narratives we put out there. There's what we call gatekeeping process in the media, whereby we have the news editor, the editor, we have the line editors, the fact checkers, you know, to check what comes out from the social media platform. So we're extremely cautious, we're extremely careful in pushing out content. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sunday. Thank you so much. So you talked about the name tag, yes, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned 1 or 2 things from that. I'm grateful that this is also a program where people are watching online. So even if you don't work in these media spaces, you have learned 1 or 2 things. You have learned the right use of words. And I'll also say that sometimes you want to address these persons, you don't know what to do. Walk up to them and ask them how they would love to be addressed. It's so simple. I've seen someone who say, call me a blind woman. And another say, call me a visually impaired woman. These are choices. So I think it's just proper to walk up to this person and ask, how would you like to be addressed? You know, it makes the world a better place. I'm comfortable in whatever it is that you're calling me. Thank you. So moving on to, okay, Esther, Blessing has something to say about, yes. Yes, the stereotypes. Okay, go on, Blessing.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to talk about stereotypes specifically and the media. This Benga Danielson story is not new, specifically in airports. In 2020, Dana Air denied a woman on wheelchair access that they were not going to bother. Late barrister Dan Lamy was at the airport then, recorded the video, shared it, and it got to BO News. We published the story at the time. Dana Air tackled us. They went to Twitter and they started saying this and basically denied it, that it didn't happen. But those who were there, it was also a video. People came out, those who have even experienced similar thing by Dana Air, they came out to complain on Twitter at the time. That was in late 2020. In, I think, late 2020 or 2021, it happened to one Dr. Chike of Care Foundation with same Dana Air. And when it was going to come out, when the narrative was going to come out, it was like aggressive. That's where I'm actually coming to. Aggressive individual, person with disability, this and that. And the complaint went out there because, of course, it was angry. They said they were not going to body him. He even got business class, or business class, right? A ticket for himself and his aide. They said they were going to board his aide. They were not going to board him. Says who? Just because he was on wheelchair. And the story went, I followed through that story till the Care Foundation had to engage airports, train them and all of that. Just because of the way this is being portrayed, this is being seen. So what is happening today? What happened last 2 weeks ago? It's not just new, honestly. And when it gets to the media, the way we say it, and I like the way Esther said, the media is not just about, now we talk about citizen media. Can we talk about citizens doctor? Can you say this person is a community person, come and treat me because I'm sick? So oftentimes, those we call citizens media, or citizen journalists, are the ones who are ruining the situation. You talked about your story, something you already packaged that is out there. When it got out there, to those who want to really chase the clouds, is something else entirely.
Thank you so much for your input, Blessing. Okay, do we have questions from the audience? Questions from the online participants? Questions from the audience or the online participants? Okay, so we have questions. Can we have one or two questions, please? Okay, so I also realized that we humans, or generally, we like to push out more of the negative stories. Let's also applaud that sometimes these persons, they say good things or positive stories about persons with disabilities. We don't see a lot of these things. I think it's only when we see the negative ones, that's when we attack. That's when we want to, castigate them and say, so I'm going to still applaud them. Please, let's give them a round of applause. They're actually doing a great job. So not only focusing on the negative aspect, let's also sometimes, when we see them publish those positive and good stories, let's use our various media platforms to push out the stories. Because I saw the traffic this story gave. I mean, this Debola story, it went so viral. So can we use that same energy when those positive stories are, published? Can we also use that same energy, to propagate the stories? Let people know about these persons. There is nobody that is immune to a disability. No one is immune. Either you have it now, your parents, it could be anyone. So let's not wait till when it is close home before we start showing empathy. Okay. It begins with you and I. I'm not going to leave this place until I have a final word from each of them, 1 minute each. Okay, so moving forward. So how now do we expect that, what strategies do we expect that you put in place to further promote positive representation of persons with disabilities? And how do we combat these stereotypes in the media industry, both print and mass media? This is for everyone. So
okay,
we started. Yes.
I'd like to also briefly touch on what Mr. Sunday said as required or as regards learning. Learning never ends. I remember that another very vivid example, I saw a movie from one of our actors. He's my friend, so I can mention his name, Lateef Adedimeji. And I remember that in that movie, the people in my living room could bear witness. The lady was on a wheelchair, and, okay, sorry, it wasn't that one. She was visually impaired. But when they were going to translate the lines, it said she was disabled. And I made to tell everyone seated here that I put Lateef on a call, and I said, no, this lady you have portrayed is visually impaired. she is not disabled like probably the translator wrote it or what you people spoke in Yoruba and it was translated to direct English. Now is awareness. I would like us to go back to our holy books for whatever reason. We're still in the month of Ramadan. I think one of the very verses that I synchronize with is the love your neighbor as yourself is one of the commandments. Sometimes I discover that we do not even, as individuals, we do not even have enough love to go round for us. Then we will now talk about people living, people with, I'm sorry about that, people with disability. A lot of us in our community, in our environment, we look away at things that we should correct one another in love. But it's like, oh, this is not my business. It doesn't affect me personally. It doesn't affect my immediate family, so why should I? Now, moving on to your question, how we can help each other. Like the Debola story that we are all making a reference of now, and like the other speaker said on the far end, it's not the first time, and that was what I said categorically. It's been happening, and I would like us to understand one very blunt truth, because I am a blunt person. It will still happen if we do not nip it in the bud. And it starts from we. It starts from the family unit. It starts from even when our children are telling us about some of their classmates who live or who are with disability. It starts from us not trying to correct them, to let them see that this person might be confined to a chair for certain reasons, but not confined in the brain. It starts from us letting them understand and appreciating the differences of life that God has made. Nobody chose to be disabled, forgive my word. Nobody chose to be. We came into life as human beings first. Like I tell people, I'm a Nigerian first before I became a Yoruba, before I became a Christian. I was first born in this country as a Nigerian. So if we take it back home and we begin to play the cards where appropriate, not looking above context or who is in the picture, Debola only got awareness because he was the son of a sitting senator. A lot of people have faced rejection, dejection, even from a lot of us. We're all culpable. You find out that people will come and work for you, domestic staff, and you're like, why is he sluggish? Why is he behaving like a retard? And we speak down on people, even the so-called able-bodied people sometimes. We speak down on them as if they just dropped from heaven. That's why I say it go back, and this is the thing that is affecting us as a people. I know that in the United States of America, there's a popular slogan, oh, God bless me, God bless you, God bless America. How many of us reiterate, God bless Nigeria? We are quick to curse. We are quick to the negativity. We are quick to the things that dampen us. Things happen to everybody in different perspective and ramification. But if we do not nip it in the bud, that's why I said learning, it starts from cradle. When your children are growing, let them have friends who are people with disabilities. Encourage them to see the brighter side of people with disability, regardless of gender, regardless of who their father or their parents are. It starts from there, then it transcends into adulthood for us. Because most of the things we grew up to know, we knew it from cradle. It didn't just drop in our head. I remember one time like that when I was with Orisun TV about 8-9 years ago. I wanted to explain the shape of somebody's head. I'm sorry, and because it was in Yoruba, the context was quite different from what I wanted to put out there. We were talking about, how our parents, when we give birth to children, how they always want to shape our head. Okay. And I discovered that, I was really struggling. And I said, Oriti Oda. In my head, I'm like, no now, it's shape of head. So awareness, sensitization, training, education, it goes a long way to help us accept everybody as humans first before disabilities.
Thank you so much, Damilola. Honestly, she has said everything. She has summarized everything I have to say. She's done the work. But if there's something you must go home here with today is that you seated, high-seated, we are all media persons, either through your social media, Facebook. Let's use these platforms positively. We all have it. So I'm sure if I say raise up your phone, some people have 3 mobile phones, Let's use these platforms positively. We are not limiting this to only the media persons. No, we all have the blame. We all have the blame. Even persons with disability themselves. Sometimes the way they portray themselves, you can actually say, hey, why won't people talk to you about, why won't people say this about you? So we all have the work to do. It's a collective thing. So let's have this synergy between the media person seated here and those listening wherever they have. I know from this day forward, we'll be seeing a lot of changes in the social media space, in our various communities. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having us. Okay, I'm writing up with this quote that don't wait for disability to happen before you take charge. You know, be that voice in your community. Be a voice in wherever you find yourself. Be a voice. Thank you very much, everyone. Do we still have a question? Okay, so we have a question. Yes, please come forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's just about something that she said. She said with disabled people, and then she apologized for it. So my thing is, we are Nigerians. Why do we have to apologize for using a language that is not ours? She's Yoruba, or Igbo, or Hausa. When we say disabled people, I think it's okay. I think that it's not about the words. It's about the intentions. This wonderful woman is doing a lot of work in the disabled community. Why do we have to judge her as if we are Americans? We are not the owners of the English language. We need to remember that we are Nigerians. Here in Nigeria, we say blind. We don't say visually impaired. People that go to the university, they don't understand visually impaired in Nigeria. University graduates. So we need to start learning that it's the intentions that matter. I teach people with disabilities swimming, and I give them water therapy. And this is the first thing I taught them, because once we were saying something and the girl got upset over something that somebody else said, I said, if this person is not that important to you, why do you get upset over what she says or what he says? So we need to learn that we are a different people. It works in America doesn't mean it has to work in Nigeria. Our language is not English.
Absolutely.
Our language is Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa. In Igbo, in my language, I na ofa ndisi. This means that they are blind. And it's not with a bad intention, because they have a whole way that they help people with disabilities. So if I don't say people with disabilities and I make the mistake of saying disabled, it is okay. Please. That's all I think to say.
Thank you so much.
It's a conversation that will continue till tomorrow. It's neither here nor there.
Yes.
But we're changing the narrative. Thank you very much, Mrs. Moderator. Oh, yeah, group pictures. Please, can you be upstanding as we do group pictures? Thank you very much, moderator and the panelists. Let's put our hands together for them. That was really enriching. Oh, you can smile to the camera. You did a good job. Which is the camera? So they know where they're facing. Exactly, that's what I'm asking too. Camera, which camera are they looking at? Okay, this one, this one. Thank you. Please smile to the camera. It makes you look more beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. We're grateful to the moderator, Patience, to Esther, to Damilola, to Sunday, and of course, Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together one more time. The tone for the breakout section, it has been rightly set. So we're moving on to the next group of panelists. Just before that, let me acknowledge the presence of Dr. Akindayo, the head of school, Grace Schools. Thank you very much. I was told to acknowledge you and have acknowledged you. Okay, so we move on to the next panel discussion. This time around, we are focusing on fathers. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up to the microphone the moderator for the next session. And before I bring her on, thank you for all of our, I saw 67 audience online and still counting. Thank you very much. If you have questions, please drop it in the chat room, or you can just raise up your hand. The technical crew will unmute you for you to ask your question. Thank you very much for our online audience. And for those that are seated in the hall, you have any question, you don't want to come forward, just put it in writing and the moderator will read it out. And if you want to answer, please, you can still raise up your hand to answer. Okay, I'd like to bring on the moderator for the next session. Raliat Oyetunde. Let's put our hands together for her as she comes in for the next session. Keep clapping till she gets here. Thank you, madam. You look wonderful. The conversation is getting more interesting. Welcome, ma. Thank you.
That clap was not for me, so please, can you put clap again? I deserve more clap because I'm a mother of a special need child. So I need all the claps. Thank you. Better. Thank you, and thank you for staying through to this time. It's interesting to still have a full hall. My name is Ralia Oyetunde, the Executive Secretary to Sultana Nabila Cerebral Palsy Foundation, and also the chairperson of Cerebral Palsy Center in Lagos. A special mother to a 16-year-old young lady with cerebral palsy. Beautiful job I've done. I'm proud of myself. So today we are taking the conversation further. You know, it's interesting when I got the invitation from Mrs. Akonde. It was a difficult period for me, and she said, we need you to moderate a session for parents. And I said, despite the fasting period, I'm going to be there. Because our number one fans, the number one people that really give us the boost to lift on are the fathers. Not many fathers have accepted the situation they find themselves in. A lot of fathers have absconded, and you will not blame them. It's emotionally challenging, it's financially draining, it's out of this world. It's only when God says that person understands the special assignment they've been given that they will own up to it. So I'm going to call these special fathers, and the applause I want is something big, thunderous, that will make their heads swell for taking on this assignment and coming on. I'm calling the first, in no particular order, Mr. Akan Nkana. A man that is passionate about SMEs and also a passionate father. I had a chat with him and I was overwhelmed at what he's done for 17 years. Welcome, sir. The next father I'll call is Mr. Aderemi Oduniyi. A special father of an autistic son. Another fantastic man. Please clap for him. Thank you, sir. I have Mr. Muiwa Majekodumi. This is a man that is around our network. I've known him since 2019 in the Down syndrome space. So when I called him yesterday, he was shocked. But he doesn't know that I know more about him than he knows more about me. So he's a man about town. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And the last daddy standing is Mr. Nofiu Shegun. Thank you so much. Okay. Navigating intentional parenting for a child with intellectual disabilities. It requires patience, requires understanding, and a tailored approach. There is no cap fit all in parenting, even without parenting special needs child. In parenting at all, there is no global rule. There is no handbook on parenting. Each child is different. Each situation is different. The fact that your parent brought you up in a particular way doesn't mean that you have to bring up your kids in a particular way. Times and seasons changes. So now I'm going to start from my extreme left, Mr. Nofew. I'm going to ask you first.
Thank you, ma. I'm listening.
The question I'll ask is, how did you take the news of your child being diagnosed with something special? How was the reception at the beginning?
Wow. Good afternoon. It's not funny, ma. At times, when I attended some conferences, people will say, autism, auxum. It make me somehow, what is auxum about autism? Right now, as I'm talking, I don't have a qualified word to use for it, but I can say it's rough, it's bad, it's smooth. I don't know. I can remember when my son being diagnosed, I do as if nothing happened, but at the middle of the night, I wept like a baby. My wife is petting me. It's okay, it's okay. I'm asking God why. But later, I now realize that because I don't know if I have enemy, and it's not possible for no woman to not have enemy. I'm very sure that if I have enemy, I don't pray for him to have son or child living on autism. I don't pray for them. It's not a funny experience. It's not a funny. In fact, I don't know what to say for now. Maybe if you have this senior father, they will be able to explain for that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nafew. You see, when a child is first diagnosed as a parent, my daughter was diagnosed at the age of 9 months. And the first thing that happens is denial. You go into denial stage. Then you go into the questioning stage. Then you go into the acceptance stage. Then you go into the self-doubting stage. This particular thing I've accepted. How am I going to navigate it? Then finally you settle into the acceptance. And until you go through these 4 stages, you cannot parent that child. You cannot understand the special assignment you've been given. So, Mr. Nafew, God found you worthy and gave you that special assignment because he knows that you can truly bear it. And truly, nobody is more prepared and more prepared to take on that assignment than you have. You will navigate your way and you will find success out of it. So, Mr. Nkan, senior father, as we have titled.
I'm not senior. I'm the youngest, yeah.
Okay. What has been the challenging factors in raising your special child? And what method of parenting have you adopted that has helped you or has given you peaceful sleep since?
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. The first challenge I had was the diagnosis. I like to say that because almost every school, almost every quote-unquote Montessori school, which is what we are told to meet them, always claim that the child was just a slow speaker. They refused to append the diagnosis of autism to the child. So that gave me a lot of problems. I had to get a speech therapist from Ibadan to come to the house every once a week, and it was draining. I spent twice the school fees on the Montessori school. Child a junior brother. So if I'm going to pay 100,000 per term, I'm paying 200,000 for her for the same time because they have to put her in a special class, and that was draining. So meeting with Patrick's helped me. First and foremost, get to a place that understands your child. It was like breakthrough. Somebody finally would see my daughter and say, oh, we know what is wrong with her. So for me, that was the first help I had. And with that, I began to be trained on how to correctly parent my child. Because it would assume that because I'm a parent, I would know what to do or how to go about it. And I attended a lot of training. They told me a lot of things. And even much recently, I had an episode with my daughter. And for some reason, she did something that was way off her age. She's never done that growing up. And I lost my cool on her. When I got to school, for some reasons, the girl was able to communicate with the teacher. The teacher now called me up. I said, okay, this is what she did. How can she do that kind of thing? She's getting to 17. And when they asked me some questions, who is staying with her? Why would she do that? And I began to look foolish. I felt very embarrassed. That day I cried when I got home. And I told my wife, this is what they told me. And we felt so stupid. We thought we'd mastered it until something showed up and showed us that, hey, there's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot to uncover. So what do I say? I say all this to say that the art of parenting is an ongoing learning situation, and you need every information you can, and hopefully you will get through community like this and through these issues. But through it all, the support group helped it, made it better. Knowledge was very, very important for me to that process. So that's what I would say for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nkam. What I will say to that is, brief of what he said, educate yourself. Learn as a parent, you need to educate yourself. You need to learn about your child's specific disability, the characteristics, and how it may impact their development. Understanding their needs will help you to provide the desired or appropriate supports. He just said the daughter did something, maybe he was expecting a normal behavior. I tell people, when my daughter was diagnosed, I was just in the middle management level of my banking career. So one thing I did was to do extensive research. I never had the word autism. I never had the word cerebral palsy. Yes, I've had Down syndrome because of the look, you will know. But Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, I never heard about it. I'm from Aroke. I'm from Kwara side. So coming to Lagos and hearing the word, I first of all called the doctor. I said, please, what is cerebral palsy? Then, he was trying to educate me as a medical person. And I did research and I said, wow, this is a lifelong thing I'm going to deal with. Then I went to autism. I said, okay, is this some CP will present itself, autism, or autism will have CP? And I said, how can one individual combine these two things together? But because I sought knowledge, I sought education, it helped in when she displays some behavior, we know that, okay, this is as a result of the peculiarity or the uniqueness of her being. So as a parent, you did the right thing. You educate yourself and you know how to mitigate or meet their needs. Okay, sir, I come to you. What are the parenting styles you've adopted that so far has been helpful in raising your child?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Remy Udunui. I'm a father of a 22-year-old autistic son. He's here with us. I always want to appreciate mothers anytime they call me for things like this. Because when you look around, how many fathers do you see here? Me sitting down here too, I will tell you authoritatively that my wife emotionally is stronger than me. She gave me that support. She gave me the support. Because I wish you had directed the question you directed to the father over there, to me, that the first time it was a late Dr. Mrs. Akedayomi that diagnosed, that made us know what was wrong with our son, that it's autism. We've gone everywhere, and they you tell us that, I mean, is witchcraft, is this, is that. When I heard it the first time, I just said, Mogbeo. So this is what I'm going to be living with. Second, I thank all mothers in the house, because honestly, you are doing a very good job. Anytime I find myself alone with my son, Oluwatobi, it's challenging. It's challenging because, I mean, it has taught me how to have patience, how to love without ceasing. You know, how to, you know, it's so emotional because, I mean, when you have a child, you know, let me just put it like this. Our society, we are too hypocritical about so many things. Especially when you go to, especially the religious environment. They would always tell you all is well, but all is not well. They are the ones that actually discriminate when you take children with disabilities to church or to, well, I've not been to the mosque. You understand? So each time I take Toby to church or we're in the church, I'm always paranoid. I'm always edgy because I know overzealous stewards, what do you call them now? Stewards in the church will always want you. I mean, just take, for example, when you are breastfeeding a child in the church and the child starts crying, you notice how these people behave. You understand? They make you believe as if you are not a good mother. You understand? Well, coming back to answering your questions, patience has been the watchword. You have to be very, very patient with the child. You have to show the child love. And in showing the child love, you have to instill discipline. Sometimes when you see them, you want to show some level of pity for them, but they are very, very smart. They take you for granted, and there are times they want to test your patience by exhibiting some tantrums. My son sometimes knows that, I mean, it's wrong for anybody to make noise in the middle of the night, midnight. That is when you decide to start his tantrum. And he knows that he will not want a situation whereby he will be shouting to. So that is when he will now want to press his own demands. That maybe he wants to take something that he's not supposed to take. And because we don't want to wake neighbors, we don't want to be a nuisance, we just, you understand? So patience, you have to be, you know, when you take your child out, ignore irritating behaviors targeted at your child. You understand? Because so many people will say so many things that will want to make you, you know, go above board. But in all things, just show the child love and be very, very, very patient. They need lots of patience. If you have a child with autism, you will learn how to be very, very patient. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so very much. That was very insightful. Patient is the key word, even in anything you do at all. I can identify with you. Sometimes when you enter a plane and there is a child or a young adult on the spectrum on the plane, and maybe their food is not very hot. I don't know if you've experienced that. And they start throwing up. And you see,
we experienced that the first time he was on the plane.
So everybody will start, all the passengers will be staring. Or you are sitting at the lounge and the child starts, you know, getting agitated, tantrum. And instead of everybody either facing your front or offering a word of comfort, they start staring as if they have seen a hydra-headed human being. Yeah. You know, it's interesting that it's not only to autistic kids. You say mosque. I carry my daughter for Eid, and she sits on a wheelchair. And the first time we took her to the central mosque, somebody actually came to give her money thinking she was a beggar.
Oh, God.
Because she's sitting on a wheelchair, and she's a young girl. And her nanny was pushing her. From that day onward, if we need to take Nabila out, the nanny carries my handbag. I push my daughter. And I tell them, I said, she is my property. I will own up to it. And just like Debola Daniels had experience, I was telling Denike, September 2023, I had the same experience at the international airport. We had arrived on Virgin in the morning around 5:30 a.m. They left us in the aircraft for 30 minutes after everybody had disembarked. This girl had flown for 6-7 hours. She was restless. She didn't sleep well. She needed to eat. She needed to change. They didn't come. I took her and put her on her own wheelchair. Luckily, her wheelchair can go through the passenger. So I pushed her there, gave her younger sister our load, and I pushed her. And we got to the point of going down the escalator. There was no escalator. The operator of the escalator was asleep somewhere. Nobody. And they were all looking at me. And what did I do? I simply carried my bag, gave my younger daughter. I took my daughter, I backed my 16-year-old daughter, and I went down the staircase. And I dropped her to sit down, then I went back and picked her chair. So everybody, nobody, no passenger could offer that, Madam, let me carry this hand luggage. Let me carry this bag. Or even the male one, so let me help you. It was my cross to bear alone. So what am I saying in essence? We all need to show empathy. It is my turn today. It could be yours tomorrow. You don't have to be on the spectrum. You don't have to have Down syndrome. It could be old age. It could be accidents. This special ability can happen at any age. So as we go out there, we need to show empathy. We need to identify. And, sometimes just you are doing well to the parent goes a long way. I tell my friends, maybe you didn't notice when Denike came down, she hugged me. I thrive on hug. I tell people, when you see me, please hug me. I need that huddle to show me that, oh, you are doing well. This morning I woke up at 8. The driver did not show up. Nabila had to be in school. She's a boarding student, but I chose to keep her home for 3 days. I had to get up. I drove Nabila to Jakande. I came back home, took a bath, and I drove myself here. And I needed a hug. And my husband just said, we'll go for your walk. I'm going to pick her up for you. And I said, oh, give me a hug for that. So please, let's try to empathize and help or show kindness towards people dealing with special assignment. That is what we have. Now, special assignment. So to you, Mr. Majeko Dube, your question is this. Sorry, just a second. Okay. How do you approach decision-making and long-term planning for your child's future, considering the unique needs of their ability?
Very hard question. Good afternoon. First and foremost, let me describe myself as a very proud father of a son who has Down syndrome. I'm very, very proud of that young man. In all my life, I think planning has been one of my banes. Let me tell you why. I live one day at a time. I live exactly one day at a time. And if anybody had told me that I was going to have a child with Down syndrome, I would have just said, because I didn't know what Down syndrome was anyway. But from the day he was born, from the first day he was born, I didn't go through that shock. I didn't go through that shock. Maybe because I was as high as a kite that day. After working in the lab, I used to work in the distillery. So I came out of the lab slightly high. But I'm still high. So I took it with equanimity, and I said, this is the gift from God. And over the years, primarily because over the years, for about 8 years, I had to bring up 4 children on my own. Yeah, about 8 years, because my wife had to go abroad. So I had to play the role of father and mother. And it was one day at a time. But what I did was this, with each of my children, especially BJ, I tend to observe what their talents are. You see, gold and silver I do not have. What I have is what? A lot of love. A lot of love, a lot of attention. No matter what I'm doing, no matter whether I'm busy at work and they call me or I'm at home, I leave what I'm doing and give them attention. So with BJ, because he's my firstborn, my daughter is married now. My other son is working somewhere. The last one is in Unibag, studying engineering. But for BJ, it has been one day at a time. I discovered what his talent was from day one. And that was because his talent is music. Now, I had a habit of, each time my wife was pregnant, I used to put headphones over her belly and pumping all kinds of music, you know, whether it's jazz, high life, classical music, church music, and things like that. So BJ has grown up in music. In fact, he was the one who performed the national anthem. Yeah, that's BJ, my son. I'm very, very proud of him. Now, at the risk of being politically incorrect, I had to appeal to Mrs. Akonde. At the risk of sounding political, and I apologize, but I'm not sorry if I say this. I have a quarrel with the with the first stanza of the national anthem, because for me, we don't live it. We don't live it. So I said, look, second stanza is a prayer. Yeah. It's more realistic. BJ had never ever done that first stanza, that second stanza. For the last 3 weeks, I've been trying to get him to do it. Up to this morning, he still didn't know it. I almost lost my cool. I was panicking. And I was shocked. I think he was having a go at me. Because you're right, he's very mischievous. These children are very mischievous. He was having a go at me. He got on stage, and despite my little prompting, you know, he did well, very well. I think he did well. You heard him. He did. Fantastic. So, living one day at a time again is this. We attended several churches where BJ was, okay, he wasn't really recognized as such. But we've now changed churches, and the church we now attend, he's recognized. He's allowed to sing. I'm not joking. He's allowed to sing. He's allowed to express himself. And I just realized that he has a wonderful future in music. What other talent does he have? You got to observe your children's talents. What other talent does he have? BJ loves to tidy up. He loves to sweep. He loves to he's the one who's in charge of the house every morning. He does his chores without prompting. So I encourage him in that light. The thing is, I focus on his strength, not on the weaknesses. And what tomorrow is going to be like, I don't know. I can't tell you this is what. And see, when people say they plan, I said, well, you're good at it. I don't know how to plan. All my life has been directed by the Creator. One day at a time. People I have met, I didn't expect to be here if not for BJ. I wouldn't have met you guys if not for BJ. I wouldn't be where I was if not for what God has put inside me. So it's a question of living one day at a time and allowing the Creator to be the guide. It may not sound feasible professionally, but I'm sorry, it has always worked. It has always worked for me, and that's what I've been doing.
Thank you so very much. Identifying the unique talent of that special individual you have. It's every one of us, we all have that bottle of oil in us. Whether you are specially created or you are ordinarily created, if you look deep down, some of us are talkatives. Some of us don't talk. Some of us can cook with our eyes closed. Some people can't boil water. So you need to identify what that uniqueness in. That is the stage I'm in now. We are trying to identify the uniqueness of my 16-year-old daughter. And I think, like you said, she's playing on my nerves because she likes anything tablets. And when you say, oh yeah, come and do this, come and pick beans, you say, oh my God, I'm tired. But you are a lady, you need to cook. Come and pick beans. Oh, mommy, my hand is paining me. I say, but you would like to eat, you know. We are trying to get her to be domesticated. But we are finding a roadblock there, so we need to identify. So I'll come to you again, Mr. Nofio. What advice will you give a new parent that has just been diagnosed, that their child has just been diagnosed with autism?
Okay. First of all, I would like to appreciate every mother in this hall. To be sincere, father are not doing fine in this field. But at least 4 of us, we are showing that there are some father that still have good quality to support their wife in whatever situation they find themselves. I need to highlight where I learn a lot. Conferences like this, support group, it has really helping us in my family, and I'll give you an example. When we start initially, when my son being diagnosed, I thought in 2 years he will be okay. But Yomi is going to 9 years now, and he's still on the spectrum. I've put that over me. But when I go to support group, when the older ones are talking, my son did this, my daughter did this, I say, eh? So that when my son gets to that stage, it's not new to me. Okay, this father says so thing, this so day. This one say, okay, let me look at the one that is applicable to me, and I'll look at it judiciously. I'll decide, okay, my wife, let's do this, we will do that. With help of God, we will be able to move on. And another thing I observe is that initially we start from Lut. From Lut, we go to the child, adolescent, psychiatric Katoshodi. But presently now, we are not using any medication, man. I make sure we work on his dietary. And it really work for us. Not that when this Nigeria wahala started, we are not be able to meet up. But that, it helped a lot. So that we'll be able to reduce his hyperactive, his attention. And finally, it's good for father, we should listen to the therapy, the instruction they are giving out. Patrick, speech and center have really helped us a lot. I don't know how to thank them. But they have really helped a lot. And it showed that Yewumi have been improved a lot. He like working on phone 24 hours without no disturb. Yewumi can write more than 100. Yewumi can do so many things. But when they are telling us, I'll just, Yewumi, can you do this? And when we got to, with help of the therapy and our own effort, we'll be able to share that. So that father, we shouldn't be relent. I'm highly surprised in one of the support groups when I heard that twins, one is on the spectrum, the other one is normal. And father said the second one now call community meeting. I'm highly surprised that the woman should go and look for the second of the that is not encouraging. So that both parents need to be in, I don't know how to put it, they need to be support one another, co-parenting to be able to, that's what I've learned.
Thank you very much. We're Africans. I have been labeled a witch. They said my mother did something. My mother wanted to give my first daughter witchcraft, and since she didn't succeed, she gave it to the second daughter, all and all. But above all, I tell them, try and create one human being if you are a witch. You know, Yoruba has a proverb, Ajekelano omokuleni. The witch cried yesterday, the child died today. God has then seen that child to die. That is simply the truth. So if your faith in the Lord is shaken, then you will listen to what the society has to say. So for me, talk is cheap. They will talk. Let them turn their own into an autistic child, and they will know what it is to deal with one. Thank you very much. I ask you, our big daddy, how do you navigate emotional roller coaster? And I'll tell you why I asked that question. Some days I cry. I cry not because I'm questioning God. I cry because of the fear of what future does my child have if I die now. She's 16. She's a girl. She's in between two sisters. If anything happened to me or her father, what future does she have? That was what prompted me to setting up the foundation for cerebral palsy. But even having set up the foundation, I worry. Some days I'm sad. Some days I look at her and I just ask her, Nabila, please now, walk on your own. You are 16, get up and walk. And she will say, okay. And you know, she's saying that okay to help me feel comfortable. And I know she can see the pain. So
how do you cope with the emotional roller coaster that we go through?
Wow, that's a touching question. Why it's touching? Because in my own case, my daughter's mom passed on at age 8. So I lost my wife at age 8, and they were 7 and 8 at the time, and it was very traumatic for me. And for them, at the funeral, I was trying to understand if she understood that the mother is dead. So we at the graveyard, I said, "Mommy, God." She just looked. So her ability to process it got me. I mean, literally broke me down. Did she understand what just happened? So even when I wanted to get married again, first any lady I met, I mean, I had people that, oh, interested. First thing, I have an autistic daughter. Are you interested? It became a condition before I dated anybody. And I think one of my good friends, who's still friends till today, maybe she didn't think twice. She said, I don't know if I can deal with it. And I mean, for me, it was case closed. Later she said, I didn't say no. I said, I'm sorry. Your heart spoke. It mattered to me. Emotions, the roller coaster, how tomorrow will be. Between the two of us, I dare say that the mother would do anything to be alive to see those kids thrive. And the fact that she died made me a little bit unsure. How would my tomorrow look like? So I see the girl, how was she going to go through puberty? Was a fear I had. How would she know how to change her pad? She's a little bit cognitive impaired, a little bit, and so many issues, but we thank God. She went through all those stages in her life. She's going to be 17 by the end of this month, and she's better. Presently she's doing an internship with Rough and Tumble, where she sews. She's sewn one or two of her clothes, and she's worn them around, and I'm very impressed. I see a light, but when I'm all alone, it just hits you, and a tear drops. So, the most important thing about trying to manage our emotions as fathers is to trust that however it goes, God will take care of the child. The fact that the mother could not do anything to stay alive when it was her time, there's nothing you can do. Now, literally in your mind, trusting that child to God. Yes, structures like families and friends, empowering the child so that it can be self-independent in future is something we need to do. But literally, it's a mind thing. And trusting that child to God is something that only us can do. We can cry about it, we should. Pray about it, we should. But in all, we have to trust God that was going to happen for us. That's what I would say.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Akan. That's very touching and very deep. The loss of a loved one, saddled with a special child, can almost drive you up the wall. In fact, almost drive you off the edge, off the cliff, I will say. But thank God you are still standing and standing strong. May you continue to stand strong. Yes, sir. Next to you, sir. How do you involve other siblings and families in raising your intellectually challenged individual?
Well, I thank God because in the family, it's only me and my son that were the only males in the house. So he's Okonlawo is in the midst of ladies. In fact, they are showing Oluwatobi love, support, and even as I speak right now, the elder sister, Oluwatoyin Odunui, is here. She's also a crusader of the autism spectrum. So that is why I told you that I salute women in this noble cause that we find ourselves.
Thank you so much. Involving them, showing love. Thank you. So I'll ask Mr. Majeko to me this last question. How do you address the challenges of financial planning and accessing specialized services, especially therapies for our children?
You ask me these difficult questions. Wow, how do I access what? Please repeat that question again.
I said, how do we navigate financial planning and accessing specialized therapies for our children? How do we plan financially?
Wow. Where do I start? My son is going to be 36 this year.
Wow.
He looks much younger. Much younger. And as I said, gold and silver I do not have. What I have is and it's been pretty tough over the years. But I have received support from people like the CDC, Dr. Akindayomi. I have received support from the Down Syndrome Foundation, Mrs. Rose Modi. I have received so much support from family and friends. You see, it's not something you can do alone. It is suicidal to take up this cause alone. And anybody who thinks they can do it will die before that time. I don't want to die before that time, my time. Like I said, I take one day at a time. I'm 66 years old. I feel younger. I think I look younger. And that's because I don't stress myself.
You do, sir.
I don't stress myself over money, because sometimes you look for money, you don't get it. Times you don't look for money, it will come. So like I said, I'm totally dependent on God Almighty. Like I said, it may seem professionally stupid, but for 66 years of my life, that is how I have lived my life. If I say tomorrow, if I get $1 million today, I'm not even sure what I will do with it. But all I know is that I'll spend part of it on ensuring my children, my son, especially my son, BJ. BJ, incidentally, is the firstborn. He's my firstborn. And he's the most challenging of all most challenging. My daughter is 30, she's married, the next son is okay, last born. They're all doing well, thank God. But BJ has brought me so much luck, so much love, and I strongly believe that my times and seasons are in God's hands. Like I said, it sounds professionally stupid or silly, but BJ is 35, 36, I'm going on to 67 by the grace of God, and I do know that God has something in store for him. So seek help from families, seek help from friends, get a job, do something worthwhile. But whatever will be, will be.
Thank you, Mr. Majekodumi. The conversation is still navigating intentional parenting for a child with intellectual disabilities. So, any questions from the audience, from our online participants, before we round up? Yes. We have one question here. Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 questions. Yes, please.
No hard questions, please.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm Shelila Alirage. I have 2 wonderful boys on the spectrum.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So basically, it's like a concern I want to put out, and I don't know if the fathers here, the senior fathers and the junior fathers, could help us out in explaining this thing, or just help out. I have a foundation now, and since I started, it's not yet a year. I started last year, August. I see mothers coming in with autistic teenagers, autistic boys. I've seen a lot of them. No father. The fathers have absconded. When I mean absconded, they are not in the picture. And sometimes it's so bad that they allow these women take up the financial responsibility, not just the emotional. Yes, we women are actually, I would want to say, the default parents. But these men are supposed to be there to help us emotionally so that we can carry out our responsibility as the default parents. So some time ago, I think some few wise women told me something. They said men are generally selfish, just leave them, when I brought this thing up. Now, what I want to know, is it selfishness? How do we know if it's just these men live because they are just being selfish and they just want to live a soft life? They don't want to be involved in the sacrifices, because it takes a lot of sacrifice to be a special needs parent. Just as I said, I usually say, when you are a special needs parent, you cannot live a normal life, but that does not mean you cannot live a happy life.
That's right.
But normal, regular. So is it that, how do we differentiate between them absconding because they are being selfish and leaving the woman to carry out all this burden, and also emotional, do I say acceptance? You talked about denial earlier. How do we differentiate this? Now, do we call it selfishness? Do we call it some sort of entitlement because of these are cultural belief? Lack of, I believe, these are cultural, lack of empathetic cultural teaching. I'm sorry to say that. I usually call it, I'm half Yoruba, so I call it Yoruba hypocrisy. Lack of empathy being taught from childhood. You know, you're teaching, because you notice these men, they abscond, leave the women to do everything. But then, you want to say men are selfish altogether. You see the male kids they have with this woman performing better than their father. Being there, helping out the mother, being empathetic, doing everything possible. So, basically what I want to know, how do we differentiate between selfish and is it not selfish? And is there any way, I want to believe the fathers here were brought up here because they've been seen to be involved fathers. How do we encourage these men, or how do we speak to their conscience to be kind and to be involved in this parenting, this intentional parenting of a special needs individual?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will leave the, who will take the question for me?
Madam, are you Yoruba? Mixed. We have this saying in Yoruba that Omo to bada ti baba eni. And the other one, you know, the B part of it. You see, I want to go back to mothers to address that your question. When my child was diagnosed with this spectrum thing, my late mom, if not for the fact that I have so much love for my wife, there would have been a problem. Because at the beginning, she just started telling me, God knows where she got the child from. You understand? And you see, in women, in bringing up male children, the way you bring us up is quite different from the way you bring up your daughters. So you people are the root, my own perception, are the root cause of this problem. You give the men ego. Take me for example. I don't know how to cook. Why? Because my mom never allowed me and my younger brother in the kitchen. She will tell us that, our place is not in the kitchen. And the way, what she was instilling in me, was quite different from the ladies. Don't get too carried away with love. Love with sense. Love with, all sorts. You women are the cause. You understand? We have some friends that have this same problem, that the man just absconded. And when we got to the root cause of the whole thing, is the mothers, the sister-in-laws and everything that are the brain behind the whole thing, telling the man that only God knows where she got the anjonu, the genie she brought into the house.
Thank you so much, sir. Okay. for that, you understand. Again, he threw the question back to us, the mothers. And I said the change starts with me. You have 3 female kids, you have 1 male child. And you leave that child to play games while the female kids are with you in the kitchen. What are you trying to tell the male child? That he's superior to the female. So until we learn to treat them equally, when I was growing up, my parents treated both male and female equally. We used to eat a lot of pounded yam. And we take turns in pounding. If your time is today, you're male, you pound. And I remember my mother-in-law telling me when I married my husband that, oh, don't kill yourself that you are doing housework. Oh. Your husband can do much. They use mouth to wash plate. They don't use the manhood to wash plates. My mother-in-law actually told me that she don't think that I'm a superwoman and let the man also get involved. So we, the women, then again, when you marry your kind, I tell people, you're just going to have a child for somebody that has no rope. You get pregnant for someone that nobody can hold him accountable. You go ahead because he's doing you a favor. So such men, these signs are usually there. But because the women pretend to be blinded by love, financial is totally a different game. Emotional and connection. If that man, if you notice the caring in that man and the man truly loves you, anything that comes out of you, the man will take and join you in the journey. So again, I blame my sisters. We either marry wrongly, we chose the wrong men, or we found their ego, or we show them that we can do it. And that is the truth. Sometimes you think you can do it. The man will look at you and say, you can do it. Who could be doing it now? I cannot do it. I am a woman. And I like telling my husband, well, God has placed you at the head. You can never be the tail. So please, can you do it? Really, I know how to fan him and I'll get what I want done. But so until we remove this, our feminism of I'm a woman, I'm a she for he, I can do everything, we will not get the help we desire. That is the truth. The next question, please. The gentleman in white. Our online presence, somebody has thanked us for this wonderful approach. And one of our participants has emphasized on training. We need to constantly train. And that is not only for government. We need collaborators. Government alone cannot do it. Individually, we can reach out and train. I am an advocate for intellectually or neurodiverse parents. I train mothers, I train fathers. I talk to them on the importance of looking good, looking after yourself, and having a healthy marriage. So training, we can never leave it. Sir, your question.
Good afternoon.
Just one single question.
Okay, so thank you all. But I would just want to say this from the first word you mentioned, that you said we will not blame fathers that ran away. Why should we not blame them? I mean, why will it be always mothers? So because we must be an advocate for these things, where we are giving excuses. We are saying, okay, it's okay they run away. So what if the mother too ran? What will happen to the child? So, but the truth is, even in an outreach of seeing 100, reaching out to 100 people, not even seeing a man, and all you are seeing is women, is really alarming, is killing. So I think I'm just thinking in my head, maybe there should be a subject or a policy or a punishment for a father. Yeah, it's true, because how can 2 people brought up a child and because of something, the other party left? So if it's a punishable offense, maybe they will not be living.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, please. One more question after this, then we round up. The day is fast spent.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to say a big thank you for the fathers that are here today. My name is Francis Omabala, and I've been working with children with special needs. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to say a big thank you to the fathers that are here today, and a big thank you to the moderator. My name is Francis Omabala, and I've been working with children with special needs for a long time. I just want to put more light. I want to shed more light into tantrums. You mentioned tantrums and them throwing tantrums and all that. I believe it's a behavior that when you can tell the period the tantrums come, then you can properly stop or prevent it from happening. Okay? Stopping it from happening doesn't really mean like telling the child, stop, stop, you want to do it. No. You can stop it from happening by trying to get that environment or that thing that child needs at that point in time before the child starts throwing. Okay? And I think this will help in your...
Thank you very much. Please give the gentleman a mic. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Philip Ode, and I work with CBM Global Disability Inclusion. At CBM Global Disability Inclusion, we work with persons with disabilities generally. For the Nigeria country team, I'm the country program manager. I'm here with my colleague Timothy, who is the country finance manager. And what we do is to break the cycle of poverty and disability, working closely with the disability movement, and this is across persons, across the clusters of disability. Now, my questions, 3 of them, basically because I'm here, or we are here because we are here to network. We really, based on our country strategy, we're looking at how we can work with organizations and persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities because they are underrepresented amongst other disability clusters. And that's what we want to do, amplify their voices as well. So we're very open, at least within these 2 days, to network with organizations that are already in this space. So my question, for instance, to the parents, first of all, is what effective interventions, whether formal or informal, have worked well for you in coping with the challenges of parenting your child? Because I know it's unique for different people and parents, and also for different child. And then the second goes, how accessible are they? Accessible in terms of affordability, availability, you know. So how accessible are they to you? And then what suggestions do you have for all critical stakeholders for comprehensively addressing the needs of persons, that's your needs and the needs of your child? So those are my 3 questions, because this will help get us thinking around how we can engage you. Thank you very much.
Can help us take that?
Wow. That sounds a little bit academic, but in simple terms, what I would say is, for most of us, because of the way we are in this country, in fact, I was always told that, guy, if you want to take care of your daughter, go abroad. Germany, if you go to Germany, the daughter will be a child of the state. If you go to Canada, all those things, that's what everybody kept telling me. I said, I can't speak any language to save my life. All I know is English. So I'll stay in Nigeria here. But the structures that we have here, primarily for me and my experience, had to do with the schools/foundations that are geared towards special needs. Like Patrick's, for me, became almost foundational to helping my daughter. And how accessible is it? Literally moving anywhere, if I have to move any accommodation in Lagos, it has to be around GRA. I don't care how expensive it is, because the everyday matters a lot. My kids, the other sibling has to have a school close to her school. So literally your life evolves around that child and where she gets the best and easiest help. So that is how it has been for most of us. I'm sure it's the same thing for us here. And how expensive? Very expensive. I want to take time to appreciate the many foundations, the Patrick schools, that have gone out of their way to give some of our children scholarship. My child was on scholarship for almost 4 years. When I saw the school fees, when I saw what I spent one time for the school fees, I was like, wow. I mean, it was off the charts. And so now that she's no longer on full scholarship, I can take care a little bit of some of the bills. But at the inception, I just couldn't. So a lot of financial aid is needed in that respect when it comes to children going to, or whether children or adults, being helped by either the schools or the foundations that are geared towards their education, their upbringing, their therapy, whatever it is, and their development. So I guess a lot of funding is needed along that line, because most people are literally under the economic ability to be able to do that. I'm sure you have a lot of experience with that, man. That's my thought.
Thank you very much. He's quite right. We need collaboration. Financial institutions. I had an IG live where I was shouting to the financial institutions, the IOCs, to partner with the special institutions. We need our government to make our schools inclusive. I remember when my daughter was leaving primary school and I was wondering where to go to. Thanks to Mrs. Akonde, we're sitting in her office and I said, Raliat, go to Anto's house. It's new, but it's very expensive. But we are there. And you know the beautiful thing? We're allowed to pay piecemeal because they know that we have other kids and it's quite expensive. So it's a conversation that has to be taken off this table because it's quite deep and we can elaborate on it for you. Thank you. The session today has been very educative. First, educate yourself. Seek for knowledge, seek for help, look for the right people to partner with. Most importantly, look after yourself. And lastly, please know that each child is different intellectually, emotionally, and we need to learn to navigate through to take on this special assignment that we have been blessed with. And I think we've done a bit of justice to it, though the conversation can be deeper, but thank you for staying with us.
Pose for a group photograph. Thank you very much. Your badges are facing the other way. Can you adjust? Thank you. Thank you. Yes, for the camera. And yours too. Thank you. You can smile to the camera. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That was really, really interesting. Okay, to move us to the next panel discussion. She's been sitting for a long time and it's our session now. Welcome with me, Tomike Adeoye. Let's put our hands together for her. Our own Tomike finally is here. Yippee! I mean, I see you everywhere on Instagram. Welcome, Tomike. Good to see you here. The microphones.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Are we tired? Are we tired? I heard no, but I heard one solid yes from that corner. But thank you for staying with us. I mean, it's been really insightful. And most of the conversation that we've had here today has been about creating more awareness. And this can only happen if we sit through conversations like this. So thank you. Please put your hands together for yourselves. You've been clapping for everybody climbing here today. So now is your turn. Please put your hands together for yourselves for being such an incredible audience. Thank you. And for this session, we have some incredibly talented individuals who are thriving in the media space. And I'll be calling them upstage. So please welcome them warmly as you've been welcoming all our guests. Today, we'll be talking about cultivating compassion, embracing the spectrum of abilities. And to join me in this session, please put your hands together as I welcome Najite Dede. She's so beautiful. Welcome. How are you? I love this, your top. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I welcome Tosin Sido. Please put your hands together for Tosin. And And we also have multiple award-winning actress, Efe Irele. Please put your hands together for Efe. They are running from me. Thank you. And of course, please welcome with me the beautiful, the gorgeous Elma Ludart. Please put your hands together for her as she comes up stage. Isn't she so beautiful and stunning? This panel session is filled with beautiful women who are not just beautiful, but are so intelligent. Welcome. And because our time is fast spent, we won't be wasting time in this session. So if you have questions, you can, get ready for the Q&A session because we'll run quickly through it once we are done. And so my very first question, do we have our mics? Okay, there's one there. Yes.
Hi.
Yes, and I'll be starting with Najite Dede, who is an actor and director. And talking about the movie industry, I mean, it's a huge industry. And earlier on, I heard somebody make reference to, was it the translation that one of the movies had and everything. And that's just to say that people notice these things, people pay attention to movies. And how exactly do you think the movie industry can play a role in promoting greater understanding and also acceptance of individuals with intellectual disabilities? I mean, most times you get to see them portrayed in ways that don't necessarily, it's not necessarily how majority of them live, but because you probably just have a script that says, oh, this is how this person should be, they are just portrayed otherwise. How exactly do you think that can be rectified?
Okay, in many ways, art imitates life. And then another proverb, if you like, is if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage or screen, as the case may be. So first of all, it's a reflection. The movies, our media, music, our arts, our theater, everything usually is a reflection of the society already. You're either projecting a mirror of what already is or what it could be. So when you see a lot of people, a lot of WDs of various types, whether it's physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities, portrayed in negative lights or as comic relief, or little people with dwarfism are somehow always, have things happen to them. They're the clowns, or people with various disabilities are infantilized. That is because in many homes, where it starts from, general society, our family members are infantilized already. So if we want to see better portrayals, they will have to be written as such. And that is by collaborating artists who have family members or have the experience themselves, or artists who have disabilities but have the talent of writing. Write it. You want to see an image of yourself, of your lived experience. Write it and look for collaborations. It's as simple as that. If it is not written, it will not get filmed. And nobody is going to do you a favor, because you have a disability. You don't get done any favors anyway in our business. You have to write it. Those of us who have a problem with what you call typecasting. You may be written a particular way, or you're only offered certain roles because you look a particular way, or the producers think that, oh, this is the kind of role you can play. So you have that as so-called able-bodied person. So with a person with special needs or PWDs, but that's not all you are. That is not the sum of your experience, your disability or different ability. But you have that thing. If you are a writer, if you are an actor, if you're any of those things, you push for it. and the platform will be created for you. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much. I mean, I really love that angle because truly they say no one can tell your story like you, and we can't expect that they will get it right at that. And trust me, I would be coming to you and picking up from that question. You being a producer, a film producer yourself, how exactly would you say that casting directors and producers can actively seek out and audition actors with intellectual disabilities for roles that actually authentically reflect their lived experiences? I mean, when the story is authentic, it hits different. And that's why you see when you watch true life stories, you feel so connected to it because somebody lived it. How do you think directors and producers can, work on this?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Tosin Sido. I'm a mother of a 14-year-old child with CP. Now, thank you very much, Ma, for what you said. And the stories need to be told. If it's not written, it cannot be brought to visuals. Now, we are talking about producers and directors. The question is, if those scripts are given to them, are they willing to accept it? The acceptance. A lot of them feel like the story, we want to write a story, we want to share a story on a child with disabilities, maybe CP, autism, they want to tell the story. Are they truly accepting it? You take the script to them, are they willing to? The willingness has to be there, number one. Is it about just making money, or does the audience? Certainly not. But if we have producers and directors that have this heart for things like this, children like this, these challenges that we are facing, which is real to us, we need people like them to come forth. We ourselves that are having children, we have relatives, we shouldn't keep this to ourselves. We don't expose ourselves. We keep them, because I don't want people to say no. We should also work with the NGOs, these people, no more, so that by the time we are bringing this out, we are making it as real as possible so that people can actually relate with them. We are talking about the government. What is the government doing? The question is, are we pushing it out enough to the face of the government, enough to the face of the people who can truly help, who can truly assist? Because let's tell the truth, there are people that are out there. Yes, this is just a few of us. There are people that are out there, they are crying, they don't know what to do. They have those children, they don't know what to do. And they say government. Yes, it doesn't have to be the government, but sometimes people can spring up, people can comfort. So we need to have producers, directors, take the script, request for scripts. Push a foundation, push something out there. Let the people know that, yes, this thing is there. It's not all about the money, but it's about the message. It's about the calling people to the awareness that, look, there are people out there that need our help. So we pray that directors, producers, it's, yes, it's good. Follow, look for the main people. But what about the heart? Truly, if we have the heart, if we have producers and directors who have the heart, yes, they will go after this and they will yes, I want to help. I want to help. The heart is number one before the storyline comes in. And when the storyline comes in, we will see how we can actually make it real. By working with these people, the NGOs are yes, we can truly portray this, and in the same way, showcasing these different organizations that can help. And when this is being done, the people who don't know what to do, who are crying for help, then they are aware, they can see that, yes, I can go to these people, there is hope for me. So we are not doing enough, and I believe that there's a lot that we can do. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Ife, the spotlight is on you. I mean, aside being a multiple award-winning actor that you are, you are also doing great work in terms of creating awareness for autism, and that's by your foundation, of course, the Eferele Foundation, which is basically to create our Autism Foundation, which is basically creating awareness. And being in the media space that you are, how exactly would you say filmmakers and screenwriters can avoid falling into the trap of portraying these individuals solely from an angle of pity, and maybe focus more on their resilience, their strength, and all of that? I believe, over the years you've created awareness. We've seen videos that you've made, we've seen lots of posts from you creating awareness. But people in your field, your industry, how do you think they can work on how they portray them? Aside from the PT angle, every time we see it is either just trying to create sentiment or just for emotional basis. These people are talented. They are strong. How do you think the producers and filmmakers can work on that?
First of all, I would like to say that I feel like a lot of producers don't care. They really don't care. A lot of actors as well don't care. I've had situations, from the moment I started my career, I decided, you know what, as I'm growing, everyone is going to know about autism. I've made that my life, what would I say? I've made that part of my life because I want you to ask me. I have a brother who's, how old is Ben? He's 29. And for 29 years, that has been my life. And I realize that a lot of times when I talk about autism, or if you meet me for the first time and you're having a conversation, best believe I'm going to talk about Ben. And people always go, oh, I'm sorry.